Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Currently On podcast. Today is Thursday, August the 13th, 2020. It is currently 11:06 a.m. Central Time. Now, in this episode of the Currently On podcast, I'm going to need you to use your imagination, right? I'm going to need you to imagine yourself in a scene and a scenario that I'm going to describe. I'm going to need you to picture yourself in this scene, in this scenario. I'm going to do my very best to create a picture, and I want you to be able to see yourself in it, all right? And I think people are going to relate to this in different ways. And I think one of the major influences on how that's going to determine how people react, I think the thing that's going to determine how people respond to this scene, this scenario that I'm going to describe, I think what's going to be the number one influencer of how people react is going to be where they were born and where they were raised. If you were born and raised in Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, I think you're going to react in a way that you may not be able to relate. Let's put it that way. Your reaction may be, okay, I guess I get it. What's the big deal? But if you were born and raised in a small town, I think you're going to definitely be able to relate. And I think you're definitely going to have stronger feelings about the scene, about the scenario that I'm going to try to paint for you. So if you're born in a large town, a large city, I think you're going to have one kind of reaction. And if you're born in a small town, if you're born and raised in a small town, you're going to have a different kind of reaction. I think your ability to relate to it is going to be greatly determined by where you were born and where you were raised. All right. And what I'm going to try to do, I'm going to try my best to paint this picture so that at least everyone can at least imagine themselves in the scene, right? I'm going to try to describe this in a way that no matter if you were born in a large city or a small town, you can go, okay, I can kind of get it. I can kind of see myself there. And that I'm going to try to do it this way so that at least everyone can relate to it to some level, because the way you relate to this scene is going to be very important in how you relate to the topic we're going to be discussing, all right? And this is a situation I wish I had a table with a lot of people sitting around it and everyone could throw in their thoughts and opinions, because I think everyone's reaction here is going to be very interesting. And, I'm going to look forward to hearing everyone's reaction who listens to this. So are you ready? All right, here is the scene I want to create for you, the scenario. I want you to imagine that you're on a road trip. Okay, I think everyone can relate to that. You're on a road trip and you're traveling all across the United States of America. You're traveling all over the United States of America. All right. Now, if you're listening in another country, you may not be able to relate to that. But try to imagine that you're in the United States of America and you're just traveling all over the country. And you find yourself in the great state of Texas. And I'm going to use Texas for this because, well, that's where I live. So I think I can do a better job using Texas in this scenario, in this scene, okay? So you're traveling all over the United States of America and you enter into the great state of Texas. And yes, I'm very aware that some Texans, we don't like to refer to Texas as a state. We refer to it as a country, and we like to somehow convince ourselves that we don't actually belong to the United States of America. Yes, Texas, Texans have they're very proud of their state, and they want to view it as its own independent country. But that's for a different podcast, okay? So you're entering into the great state of Texas. And as you begin to drive across the great state of Texas, you find yourself going into these very small towns in Texas. Now, I know every state has small towns, but for this scenario, we're in Texas, very small town. These little towns, has 200 people, 300 people, 400 people. They're not very large. They're very small. And when you kind of look at the town, now, depending on where you were born and raised, you're immediately going to have a reaction. Like some people in a big city may look at those small towns and go, how could anyone live here? I can't even imagine living here. Others from a small city may go, wow, this would be kind of interesting to live here. But you're going to have some kind of reaction, and you're going to have different reactions based on where you were born and raised. But you're in a small Texas town. You realize that your gas gauge is, showing you that you're empty. So you're like, oh, find a gas station. You find a gas station. You put gas in the car and you realize, man, I'm hungry. Is there any place to eat around here? And so you go into the quote unquote gas station, quote unquote convenience store, and you're like, hey, is there a place to get some food around here? And they're like, yeah, up Main Street about 2 blocks, you'll see a little diner, a little restaurant. And you're like, okay, thanks. And you get in your car and you start driving, and you realize it's kind of one of those mom and pop diners, one of these mom and pop restaurants owned by a family. It's not a part of some big chain. It's a little small town diner, little small town restaurant. And you're like, okay, don't know if the food's going to be any good, but I'm starving. I'm in the middle of nowhere, Texas, in this little small town. And so you decide to go in, and you go in, you sit down, you're looking at the menu, and you start talking to the waitress, right? And you ask the waitress, so you have you lived here long? And the waitress says, I was born here, I still live here, and I'm going to die here. And you're like, okay. And you order your food, and the waitress walks off. Now, I want you to imagine this. What do you think about that? How does that make you feel? Here's a woman who was born, lived, and is going to die in this little small town in the middle of Texas. Is there something like, are you kind of drawn to that idea? Do you find it like, oh, there's some kind of, you find it a kind of a beautiful thought. There's something about it that you think is kind of cool. It's kind of a romantic notion in your mind that, oh, this person was born here, they're going to live here, and they're going to die here. Or do you kind of go, oh my goodness, that's horrible. That person was born, lived, and going to die in this little small town in the middle of nowhere? That is sad. Like, you almost feel pity for the person. You almost feel like it's pathetic. You almost feel like they've wasted their life. You almost feel like, man, what a waste of a human life, that they were given life and they wasted it here in this no place town in the middle of Texas. They're a waitress. They didn't go anywhere. They didn't do anything. Do you feel sorry for them, or do you feel like, oh, that's kind of cool? Do you kind of have a romantic, and I'm using you kind of romantic, I'm just trying to find the words for it. There's something about it that's kind of cool, something that's kind of neat about it, or do you just feel total disgust for it? Now, again, I think depending on where you were born and raised. If you're born and raised in a large town, city, New York, Chicago, you may look at a woman, a man, anyone who was born, raised, and die in a little small town in the middle of nowhere, Texas, as their life being an abject, just complete abject failure, and that you have pity for them. Or maybe if you're born and raised in a large city, you think there's something interesting about that. If you were born and raised in a small town, well, you probably are very familiar with that story, and you've known people who were born in the small town, raised in a small town, died in the small town. And either you view that as, oh my, that's a warning to me to get out of here as fast as possible, or maybe you viewed it that way at one point in your life, and then later on you had a different reaction. All right, How do you respond to this? How do you relate to this? And the reason I'm bringing this up, the reason I want you to imagine this, is because of the name of a new album and a new song by Luke Bryan, a country artist. All right. Now, some say he ruined country music. That's for a whole different discussion. All right. Whether you like his style of country music or whether you hate it, he's still listed as a country artist. So I'm going to refer to him as one. Luke Bryan. And he released a new album. All right. And I've got the information right here in front of us. The name of his new album is called Born Here, Live Here, Die Here. Born Here, Live Here, Die Here. That's the name of the album. Now, I think with a title, Born Here, Live Here, Die Here, to be honest, I think it needs a different cover. The cover is Luke Bryan sitting on a chair. It's just smiling. It just doesn't seem to capture it. It needs Born Here, Live Here, Die Here. I think the cover needs the image of a small town. I think it really does. It needs the image of a small town And maybe you can see the water tower, because of these little small Texas towns, it always seems there's a water tower in the town. So I just think it needs or maybe the picture of a main street in a little small town. I think the cover, the artwork for the album doesn't really reflect the title. And I'm disappointed in that, because when I knew that the album was coming out and it was going to be called Born Here, Live Here, Die Here, I could think of a million photographs of small Texas towns that would have fit perfectly for the album cover, but they didn't go in that direction. They featured Luke Bryan sitting in a chair in a building. That doesn't work here, right? Born here, live here, die here. That's my own personal opinion. You're free to disagree, but that would just simply mean you're wrong. All right. So let's look at this. All right. Let's dig into this song. Born here, live here, die here. Let's look at the lyrics. All right. And I'm going to be honest with you. I'm back and forth with these lyrics. I struggle with these lyrics, and I will explain all of that in a minute. But right now, let's just jump into the song. Are you ready? Here we go. Born Here, Live Here, Die Here, Luke Bryan. The album is currently available, currently on all the streaming services. Here are the lyrics. Bunch of buddies and John Deere hats. A little crazy, but they got my back. Now let's stop right here. A bunch of buddies and John Deere hats. If you ever grew up in a small town, especially in Texas, lots of people wearing John Deere hats. It used to be very common back when I was younger. And I don't know how common it still is today, but okay, I can picture this. Now, again, if you're not from a small town, you may not even be able to that may not mean anything. You may not even know what a John Deere hat is. It may not even mean anything to you, but a bunch of buddies in John Deere hats, a little crazy, but they got my back. Know every roll through stop sign like the back of my hand. Know every roll through stop sign like the back of my hand. Now, if you grew up in a small town, you know that there's some stop signs sometimes in some weird locations, and you can just roll right through that stop sign. You just slow down just to make sure there's no one coming. 90% chance there's not going to be anyone coming through, so you're not even going to worry about stopping. And there's not going to be any cops around. There's no sheriffs around. There's no one around. So you're just, hey, that's the stop sign. Just look, and it's a yield sign. It's not even a stop sign. So if you grow up in a small town, you can relate to that. Again, you can relate to that if you grew up in a small town. Know every roll-through stop sign like the back of my hand. And every bank where the fish will bite. Now, that's not bank like where you go put your money, but the bank of a lake or a river. If you grew up in a small town, you probably know every bank where the fish will bite. Still like putting a smile on the face of a girl I've known. Okay, let me go back through this. Still like putting a smile on the face of a girl I've known since the second grade. Got a kiss that's sweet like lemonade. Now, if you grew up in a small town, you know everyone in the town. You've grew up with these people since kindergarten, first grade, second grade. You know all of them, right? So he uses the idea, still like putting a smile on the face of a girl I've known since the second grade. Got a kiss that's sweet like lemonade. She's everything I'll ever need. Another reason I'll never leave. Born here, live here, die here. From the roots to the boots to the lay me down suit. Yeah, I'm going to be proud to be right here, just like my daddy, and his daddy did too. Ride the same roads, work the same dirt, go to the same church, drink the same beer, born here, live here, die here. Everybody's got to find their place. Some dreams you catch, some dreams you chase. Some people run and some people stay. Me, I'll always be a born here, live here, die here. From the roots to the boots to the lay me down suit, yeah, I'm going to be proud to be right here, just like my daddy and his daddy did too. Ride the same roads, work the same dirt, go to the same church, drink the same beer, born here, live here, die here. I'm going to raise one up in the air tonight for all the folks like me. Here's to the born here, live here, die here. From the roots to the boots to the lay me down suit. Yeah, I'm going to be proud to be right here, just like my daddy and his daddy did too. We'll ride the same roads, work the same dirt, go to the same church, drink the same beer, born here, live here, die here. And then that's repeated a number of times. Now, there's the song. There's the lyrics. And there's a lot here that we could talk about. And I'm going to relate this to my own struggles here, because that's what I really want to get to. I want to get to my own struggles. But before we do so, we need to at least add some context here, because Luke Bryan is not the songwriter. He's not the songwriter. So if you really listen to Luke Bryan talk about the song, he has a different experience, all right? If you go to Spotify and you listen to the song on Spotify, they have a thing called Storyline. And I'm going to read to you what they tell us about the song here, okay? I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning. All right, he goes, this is the song that tells such an important part of my life about where I grew up in Leesburg, Georgia. I thought I was going to be born there, live there, and finish out my days there. Thankfully, I chased my music dreams. All right, so he's acknowledging he did not stay there. He goes, it's so endearing that people are just so content in their world that they grew up in. I love what the song says. So Luke Bryan, he didn't stay in he didn't born there, live there, die there. No, he chased his dreams. He left, but he thinks it's so endearing that people stay in the town where they were born. They were born there, they lived there, and they died there. He says there's something endearing about that. Now, he didn't stay there. He left, but he thinks there's something endearing to it. And I think that that's interesting. He's singing a song almost like bragging about, hey, this is where I'm going to stay. I was born here. This is where I'm going to stay. I'm going to die here. But that really wasn't the case with Luke Bryan. So I think that that's an interesting, does that impact the way you view the song? It impacts my view on it a little bit, but here's my struggle with it. I was born in Abilene, Texas. All right. Now that's a city of about 19,000 people now. I think it was 108, 107, maybe 100,000 people back then. Okay. It's not a large town. It's a city in Texas, not a large town, Abilene, Texas. But I moved from Abilene, Texas to a little small town about 20 minutes south of Abilene, Texas, called Buffalo Gap, Texas. Yes, that's the actual name, Buffalo Gap, Texas. And Buffalo Gap, Texas had a population at that time, I think at around 289 people, all right? Literally, there a very small town, all right? There was a little, I guess you call it a convenience store, gas station convenience store, Stewart's Grocery. All right. I would walk to Stewart's Grocery. They had like a little place you could buy sandwiches, fresh fruit, obviously drinks and candy. They even sold cassette tapes. Because you're in Buffalo Gap, Texas. You couldn't. The only way, like we called it going to town back then. We drove to Abilene, Texas. That's where the movie theater was. That's where the mall was. Okay, that's going to town. But if you're just in Buffalo Gap, Texas, all you had was Stewart's Grocery. You had we called it Mike's gas station. I don't know why we called it that. They had some candy there and a Coke machine. We call it a Coke machine, a vending machine where you could buy soft drinks. We call everything Cokes in Texas. That was not far from my house, so we could walk there and at night, because Stewart's Grocery closed at like 6 p.m. So after 6 p.m. there was nothing open. So if you needed a Coke, you went to the Coke machine in front of Mike's gas station to get a drink. Everything was closed. So I grew up, I grew up in a very important part of my life in Buffalo Gap, Texas. Now, there was a part of me that loved Buffalo Gap, Texas. I loved the little town. There was something there about it. I loved it. For some reason, when I read Tom Sawyer, even though that town was in Missouri, near the Mississippi River, that's where that story takes place. I was in Buffalo Gap, Texas. I still could somehow relate that town to Buffalo Gap. There was something about, I just imagined some of the same, there was just a sameness to it. I can't really explain it, but there was. And there was a lot of things about growing up in Buffalo Gap, Texas that was awesome. Man, I played on the train tracks. there would be these train cars that they would, set next to the train tracks. We would play in them. We would literally hop the train, ride it out into the middle of nowhere, and then hop off. There was all these places where we could roam and play. Our imaginations would go wild. We played like we were in the Civil War, World War II. We played like we were in a Western, and we were the cowboys, and all of the different things. We ran all over that place. We were able to ride motorcycles everywhere. There were no cops. Nobody cared. We rode motorcycles everywhere. We had a very large portion of land that was getting ready to be developed where they could start building houses. But at that point, there was nothing out there. And we had motorcycle trails all over the place. Got to go all over the place. It was just, I could sit here and spend forever describing that town. There was something cool about growing up in that town. However, there were other aspects to me that made me despise growing up in the area. That was going to school. Going to school, there are all these kids who are, I don't know, I can't say it in a nice way. I viewed them as hicks. These backwood hicks who didn't know anything about the rest of the world. All they knew was Buffalo Gap, Tuscola, Lawn, Texas. These are all small towns. The school, depending on what grade you're in, the schools were kind of spread out in these different little small towns. They were all these backwoods hicks who didn't know anything. Their life was hunting. I didn't hunt. Even though I grew up in a small town, I didn't hunt. They had guns. I didn't have a gun. They wore cowboy boots. I wasn't going to wear cowboy boots if my life depended upon it. When I did ride a horse, I didn't wear boots. I wore penny loafers, okay? I did not fit in. Let's just say I didn't fit in. They wore Wranglers. I wasn't going to wear a pair of Wranglers if my life depended upon it, all right? I didn't dress like them. I didn't talk like them. I didn't do the things they did. I rode motorcycles like them. I guess I did that. I played sports like they did, but they went fishing. I wasn't going fishing. They went hunting. I wasn't going hunting. I just did not fit in. Their music was, George Strait and Hank Williams, and you just, you just name the country artist at the time. Randy Travis. I don't know. I'm trying to think some of the. Charlie Daniels Band. I don't even know. I don't even remember. Obviously, it wasn't my scene at the time. Willie Nelson. I don't know. Whatever they were listening to, it wasn't in my wheelhouse by any. I was exploring the punk scene. I was listening to bands like The Clash. I loved Michael Jackson. I loved to dance. I loved breakdancing. I did not fit in at all. And so high school and school was this horrific experience, and all I could think about is I'm getting out of this place. I hate this place. I may have been born here and I may have to live here now, but I tell you this, I'm not dying there. I'm getting out. I'm getting out of this place. I can't stand this place. I can't stand these people. This place, I hate it. Now, but at the same time, I was conflicted because there was something I had, again, using this idea of a romanticized, romantic view of Buffalo Gap. It was my adventures of Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. It's where I grew up, and there was something beautiful about it, and I loved my experience there. But I got out. I got out. I joined the Air Force. Boom, I was gone. Now, yeah, I had to still stay in Texas for a while. I had to go to San Antonio, to Lackland Air Force Base for basic training. Then I went to Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita, Texas. Still another small kind of town in Texas. But finally, I get my first duty assignment, and I'm off to Omaha, Nebraska. Now, for me, that's like I'm going to the big city. Omaha, Nebraska, off at Air Force Base, which is actually located in Bellevue, Nebraska. But, man, I can remember driving into Omaha, looking at the skyline, going to all the different – there were multiple malls, all the record stores, concerts. Man, I loved Omaha, Nebraska. I loved it. I felt like when I drove into Omaha, Nebraska, I felt like that I had been set free, that I finally got away from the hicks, the backwoods nonsense, the foolishness. I got away from it. I had been set free. I felt alive. And I cherished every second of Omaha, Nebraska. I really did. I loved it. I cherished it. I never wanted to leave, but of course the military had different ideas. the military was like, hey, we're going to move you. Now you can risk staying here, but your chances are you're gone. Chances are you're not going to make it. So what do you want to do? You've got to tell us what you want to do. I did not want to leave. In some ways, I wish I would have just risked it and see if I could have stayed there, but that wasn't the way life was going to go. So I didn't know what else to do. So they said, we don't know where you're going to end up, or you can just choose. And I said, well, I guess I'll go back to Abilene, Texas. Dyess Air Force Base is there. I guess I'll go back there. My thoughts were I didn't have a good relationship with my father. I'll go back. And so I ended up back in Abilene, Texas. That's where I ended up. I ended up back in that area. Now, I didn't move back to Buffalo Gap, which 20 minutes away, but I was still in the same area. So I was born there. I lived there. I left, then life brought me back, and then a whole set of circumstances happened that then left me there. Okay, because you think I'm in the military, I would have left again, but things got crazy. I won't go into everything that happened to me in the military, but let's just say that didn't happen. And then ultimately, because of everything that happened, medically retired, and then, everything that happened. And so that's probably where I'm going to die. Now, there was a part of me that when I was, 16, 17, if I would have imagined this happening to me, I would have probably, and I'm not joking, probably taken a gun and put a bullet in my head and said that I don't want to live that way. Now I kind of go, well, there are some ways at times I'm disappointed that I didn't get to stay, say, in Nebraska or another big city. But in other parts of me, I'm like, okay, at this point in my life, it doesn't really matter. I think when you're young, it matters more to you. I can't stay here. I got to get out of here. Now, I know for those of you who live in a big city, what difference does it make? Born there, live there, die there. Nobody cares. Nobody views that as like, oh man, you were born in New York. You lived in New York and you're going to die in New York. Well, that's pathetic. No, you're in New York City, Los Angeles. Nobody views it that way. But if you are born, raised, and die in a little small town in the middle of nowhere, it's viewed as a failure. There's this big world, and this is where you stayed? This is where you're going to die? Like you like going back to the scenario, Penny, you almost want to tell the waitress, hey, get in my car. You need to escape. We need to get you out of here. We got to break you out of this prison. There's a world out there. You need to see it. You need to experience it. But is it a failure? Is it a failure to stay there? Now, again, Luke Bryan, he didn't stay. He was born in a little small town in Georgia, and he escaped. He chased his dreams. His musical dreams led him to other places. Now he's an American Idol. He's been all over the world. I don't even know where he currently lives now, but he's all over the place. So he escaped the little small town. He wasn't born there, lived there, die there. So he's singing about an idea that he thinks is somehow endearing, but it's not his experience. So is it endearing or is it not? Here's my take. I think every person, here's the thing. I think every person, let me state it this way. I'll look at it from a small town perspective first. If you live there, if you're born there, live there, and die there, and you do so just because it's just what you do, like it's just your default, position. That's just what you do. You're because you're afraid to risk it. You're afraid to go out there and see the world. It's just you're staying there just because it's comfortable. That does seem a little disappointing. That doesn't seem enduring. That seems kind of sad that you settled for it because you didn't want to risk it. You didn't want to try anything new. You stayed with what was comfortable. That's sad. But if there's something about it that you truly find endearing, something, maybe you have a romanticized view of it, and you think there's something quaint, something beautiful about just staying in that area. You know everyone, you know the town, you know every road through stop sign, you know every creek, every river, creek, tank to fish and catch the fish. You know the best places to go hunting, the best places for camping, whatever the case may be, whatever it is that's enduring to you. If there's something endearing to you, I don't think you should be looked down upon for that choice. I don't think you should be. But if you're living in that situation and things aren't good, maybe poverty or whatever, well then, yeah, it feels sad that you didn't try to risk it to get out to improve your life. But there are people who grow up in a big city and they live in poverty and they live in a bad situation. Why wouldn't they get out? I'll give you an example. When I was growing up in Buffalo Gap, Texas, a family moved in. They moved in from Harlem in New York, right? What they had done is the family had grown tired of the issues in the big city, violence, crime. I don't remember all the issues. They got sick of it. The father of the family took out a map, basically closed his eyes, pointed down, and his finger landed on Buffalo Gap, Texas. I don't even know how it was on the map. And they packed it. They sold everything they had, put it in a station wagon, and moved to Buffalo Gap, Texas, from Harlem and New York to Buffalo Gap, Texas. Talk about a culture shock. They got out. Now, that's just to me as risking trying to chase something, trying to find a better way of life. That there's something cool about that as well. I think that's cool. I think that's just as cool as the idea, maybe, for some people having this kind of romanticized idea of being born in the town, living in the town, dying in the town. I think it's just as cool to risk it to go from a big city to a small town, just as it's, to me, there's something cool about being in a small town and risking it to go see the world. But at the same time, is there something to the idea? Like, now, clearly Luke Bryan in his lyrics creates this picture of something that he thinks is endearing. Hey, they know this, they're going to work the same dirt, drive the same roads, go to the same church, drink the same beer. There's a sameness to it. Where I'm currently broadcasting from, where I'm currently doing this is a live broadcast, where I'm currently recording this, I'm in the middle of nowhere, Texas. That's where I'm currently at. And here in a minute, when I pack everything up and I'm going to be driving down these country roads in Texas, and I'm going to look at some of the houses and some of the people, they were born here. This is where they've lived, and they're going to die here. Is that a failure? Is that a failure in life? I don't know. I think there's different ways to view it. Like, on one side, I can step back and go, hey, there's something awesome about it. But there's another part of me that looks at it and go, man, there's a big world out there. You never wanted to go see it, never wanted to explore it, never wanted to live in it, never wanted to pursue a different way of life. But for some, especially those who may grow up on a farm or a ranch, it's like generations have farmed that land. They raise cattle on that land. It's just whatever. But are you just there because you're kind of trapped there? That doesn't seem like that's not a pretty picture. That seems kind of discouraging. So what's your reaction to it? My reaction to the song is I'm just like, oh, like there's a part of me there's that young part of me that's like, oh, no. I don't want to be born there, live there, die there. No, that's nothing good. Get out. Run while you can. And there's a part of me that says, trust me, I am glad I got out. I needed those 10 plus years away. I needed it. Now that I'm back, there's times, to be honest, I feel like a failure. I feel like I should have got out and stayed out. There's a part of me that says I should have left. There's clear reasons why I'm still here. So there's times I feel like a failure. So I struggle with the song. What's your reaction to the song? Born here, live here, die here, Luke Bryan. Do you feel it? Do you understand it? Do you relate to it? Do you see it as a good thing? Do you see it as a bad thing? I know I'm all over the place. I know this is kind of a stream of consciousness, but this is all what I'm trying to capture for you is when I listen to the song, I would listen to it and I would have like one reaction, listen to it again, have another reaction, listen to it again, have another reaction. And then I kind of drew the conclusion, I don't like this song because I can't really figure out how I feel about it. And then when I read Luke Bryan talking about the song, I go, well, hey, this kind of captures where I grew up. But hey, I got out. I chased my music dreams. I got out. But hey, I think it's enduring for the people who stay. Is it? some people stay, and I think in the lyric, he does make the choice. Some people stay and some people chase their dreams. Well, so if you don't, can your dream be to stay? Does that make it less of a dream? But can it be a dream if it's already what you have? Give me your thoughts. Let me know your opinions. Luke Bryan, born here, live here, die here. I'm still conflicted. Maybe you're not. I'm conflicted probably because of my experience. Others of you maybe go, I don't get it. Who cares? But I bet you, even those of you from a big city, I bet you, though, if you were at that restaurant and you met that waitress who said, nope, born here, live here, going to die here, I bet your initial reaction, I can almost guarantee your emotional reaction will probably be, man, that's sad. That's pathetic. I bet you it was a negative reaction. I bet you your reaction would be negative. If you really imagine yourself in that scene, I bet you it would be. Maybe you'll find it endearing. If you do, explain it to me. You can email me your thoughts, newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com. This kind of took a little different direction than I thought, but I'm processing the lyrics, and I would love to get your thoughts and your feedback on it as well. newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. I'll put the song on the Currently on Radar playlist on Spotify and the Currently on Radar playlist on Apple Music. Please subscribe to our playlist. They're updated every day, and they tell you the music that needs to be on your music radar, the music that's on our music radar. Currently on Radar playlist, Spotify, Apple Music. Follow, subscribe, and check back every day because new music is being added all the time. And we'll get Born Here, Live Here, Die Here by Luke Bryan on there. We've got another song from the album that I like far better, but there you go. You can think about it today and tell me what you think. And as I always end the Currently On podcast, I say this every time. Life is crazy, crazy short. It's crazy short. Get out there, enjoy life. And no matter where you live, if it's the town you were born in, you're living in, you're going to die in, get out there and enjoy it. Enjoy life. Enjoy the small things. There's always things in life that don't go our way. Enjoy the small things. Enjoy a song. Enjoy a new album. Enjoy a new movie. Enjoy a new book. Find great pleasure in those small things. It is new music night, so enjoy some new music tonight. Stay up. Stay up all night. Listen to some music. Change it up, right? Don't take for granted all the small things, all right? So there you go. Enjoy life. It's short. Thanks for listening.